Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Prevent Financial Leakage with Advanced Transaction Analytics. So my name's Emma, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm here on the marketing team at SafePaaS, and I'm delighted to be joined by Cara and Nick from EY today, who will shortly introduce themselves, and Adil, CEO here at SafePaaS. So just a few housekeeping items before we do get started. The session will be recorded for on-demand viewing. And if anybody has any questions for our speakers today, feel free to pop those in the control panel. So this is the agenda we'll be following today. So we'll start off with some brief introductions and then we'll dive right into the session. So Cara, if you'd like to briefly introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Emma. I am not on screen today because I'm having connectivity issues, so I'm trying to minimize those. But for those of you who joined us, thank you for taking the time. My name is Cara Smith. I'm with our EY Oracle Governance, Risk, and Compliance practice. Been with the company for several years, and I'm delighted to talk to you about data analytics today. Nick?
I'll try to share my screen here, or share my camera so you guys can all see me for a brief moment here. See if it works. Nick Stanoszek. We've been with EY for about 8 years. I've been doing risk and controls though for probably a little over 14 years. And one of my main focuses has been in Oracle Cloud, and it also has been around understanding how the control environment can be impacted by transactions, right? And so it's really kind of a good tie-in today when we start to talk about these advanced transaction and analytics and how it could improve your business performance, how it could reduce fraud, improve your control environment, all those types of things. So I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate SafePaaS for having us here, and I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting all of you one day.
Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Nick. And you, Adil?
Yeah, thanks, Nick and Cara, for joining us today. It's a really important topic for our customers that are, kind of digitizing their business, and they're looking for the modern kind of a governance platform from us at SafePaaS. And we need the insight and advisory knowledge that E&Y brings to the table to help our customers get the most value out of SafePaaS as they transition into a digital platform. My experience has been in risk and controls, 25 years. I've written a book on governance, risk, and compliance many years ago, and actively participate with customers and the marketplace in general through various professional organizations, webinars, and so forth. Thank you.
So, Cara, why are we all here today?
So we're here to talk about data and how to manage data and how to work through providing proactive, insightful analysis using the data that your organization is producing to make good business decisions that are driven with the right, data elements. But one of the challenges that we see in the market today is that there's a huge amount of data. It's everywhere, and spreadsheets abound. Lots of folks, use a manual solution to try and manage their data, analyze their data, and make business decisions based on that manual analysis. And I'm sure that many of you on the call today probably can really relate to that, because how many times have you had somebody call you and say, hey, gee, I really want to know about this or that, and you have to pull data from a bunch of different sources, join it all together, and then try to figure out whether or not it's current, accurate, complete, and reliable, so that you can then base your business decisions and your strategy upon it. It also is extremely time consuming, is highly manual effort, and can be very error prone. As you can see from some of the numbers that we're looking at on the screen, when you have 80% of a data analyst time spent on just searching for data in order to help make decisions, and then, coming up with formulas and spreadsheets, which may be error prone, or may not be replicable, depending on whether or not you have different resources slicing and dicing that data in different ways. There's a lot of money being spent on manual models that, in time and labor and analysis and resources to try and organize information in a reliable, effective, efficient way. And, frankly, it causes a lot of challenges and produces a lot of, a lot of repercussions if, we make bad assumptions about the data, or if it's coming from a source that we may not want it to, if it's not traceable. So there's a high cost of compliance when you're going through a manual process. Now, when we look at something like SafePaaS's transaction analytics, it becomes more reliable and more replicable, simply because you can decide on how do you want to slice and dice this data, and it's going to get pulled, the same way every time, compiled in a way that you can then replicate and you can refer to and have more comfort around what results are being produced, so that you can then make critical business decisions. It certainly helps you in terms of time savings, and also, financially, if you're spending less time trying to simply assemble data or figure out where it came from or analyze it, you can spend more time making business decisions driven by that information. So there's definitely some upside to automating a process in a way that is going to be easier to replicate. It is going to be reliable. The other thing to keep in mind is that oftentimes, I'm not sure how many of you out there are nodding right now when you think about, you saw a spreadsheet a month ago, somebody put together, and you thought, oh, this is really great. You go to look for it again and can't find it because it's not in a one source of truth type of location. You also spend a lot of time searching stuff down or trying to find where things have landed that you may be relying on or want to replicate in the future. So, for reliability and efficiency's sake, thinking about having a one source of truth is often something that, organizations that I work with really try to find answers like this one. How can I make better use of my people's time? How can I focus their energies where it makes the most sense for my organization? And how can I eliminate some of these errors and rework and, kind of spending more time doing administrative activities rather than really driving the business forward and reaching our goals?
Yeah, one thing to add here is when we think about the data that's coming out of these different systems, right? We'll talk specifically Oracle. While it's a normalized database and data platform, right? The data that you're getting, it is also coming from multiple places, right? To get these transactions, you're going to need it from more than one report, one table, what have you, and compiling all of that to get it in a format that's digestible is also challenging. So aside from the fact that we have to have a spreadsheet or some type of tool that can do it, we'll talk about other tools that are out in the, that used to be around or might be still in the market. You have to figure out where the data is. You have to get all the data into a specific format that is digestible by whatever tool you're using. And then you have to create the analytics. So whether it's a query or what have you, to get the data into an analytic way to give you the data that you want out is also challenging. So you have to figure out where the data is first before you can even get to these spreadsheets, which then also, again, cost money to create. They contain errors a lot of times. There's a lot of testing that goes along with it. There is a lot of ongoing testing to ensure that the data continues to be accurate, especially if you're going to rely on it as a part of a control. So, there's a lot of things to think about, and that's why, when we see what, we'll talk about case studies and things like that later on, but why transaction analytics is a really good tool to be able to fast pace your way into getting the data that you want out in a format that's digestible to help you support your control environment. So.
Yeah, so we've talked about some of the challenges already. But what are other challenges that you're seeing with your customers, Nick and Cara?
So I'll jump back in here, and thanks, Nick, for adding that context. One of the things that I am seeing fairly consistently throughout the market and the organizations that I work with is that there are delays inherent in having a more manual process like this, where, if we reach back to what Nick was talking about, sourcing the data, figuring out how you want to slice and dice it, creating that analysis, and then, publishing that to your audience in order to help you make a decision, is oftentimes, your analysis is going to be delayed because it's not a quick process. When you think about the many places that you could source data and try to pull it all together into something that is going to help you form an opinion and form a strategy, often takes a lot of time. So timeliness becomes a real factor, especially in a market that moves very fast. If you need to make a quick decision, you may be held up by some of these activities. So it's not the most efficient way to do it. And from a controls perspective, your cost of compliance becomes much higher when you have these types of manual processes. Just kind of supporting all of that, making sure that you're maintaining, the data in a way that is digestible, that you're disseminating it, that it isn't on demand. It really does take time. That cost of compliance becomes quite high in some cases, depending on what you're dealing with. So when you think about those factors, creating efficiencies and having something that's more reliable is really a goal that a lot of the organizations and clients that I work with are looking for. Time is money. We all want to spend less time crunching numbers on an Excel spreadsheet and more time figuring out how we can be more successful in our objectives. So, as I look at this, organizations do really look for these things because it's burdensome for many. Nick, did you have any other insights?
Yeah, another thing, and it's not necessarily, this may not be necessarily a challenge. We talk about specific here, we're talking about challenges, but another side of using transaction analytics is just a way to, help you understand, where transactions are happening, right? It might help you support some type of a look back procedure down the road if you need to, if you have issues with controls. It just may help you from an operational perspective. Maybe you have an issue with duplicate paying invoices, or duplicate invoices coming in, or multiple suppliers with the same name but maybe different bank accounts. Whatever it might be, there's different ways that you can use this tool to get you that information and be a little bit more proactive in the process. We've had clients that have done these things to help. It almost essentially pays for itself because you're saving money on one side or the other regarding maybe it's payments or invoices coming in or whatever have you. So it's not necessarily always challenges. It could help from an operational perspective as well.
Okay, and here we have an example of Oracle ERP Cloud reporting. So do Oracle ERP Cloud customers face other challenges?
I think the biggest thing from our side, when we think about Oracle Cloud reporting, is just the complexity of building these queries, right? You have a query builder and whatnot, but just the complexity of getting this data into a format, first of all. Second of all, then you have to figure out what data you're looking for specifically as well, right? When we have the analytics side, it's helping us digest it a little bit better because it's telling exactly what we need to look for and whatnot. So I think, from our side, the biggest challenge here is just nailing down the specific data that you need. As you can see here, it's not in the most, we'll call it the English, right? It's not in the most English readable format. So you have to have somebody that understands this in order to be able to digest it and go forward, right? So it's another personnel, and then you have to have somebody that understands the analytics side of it, and maybe they're a little bit more of a data person, right? So I would say that's probably one of the bigger challenges, is just all the people that are involved and being able to digest this and know where to look for the information. Cara, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, nothing to add there.
And what about test scripts?
So test scripts are another one, right? So we have, as you can see here, we have SQL-based queries and data dumps. SQL, everybody probably on this call knows what SQL is. It's a pretty old school query language, right? But there is some dependency from who can do it, right? Whether it's a DBA, IT, so that IT dependency, it's specialized skill set. It's not something that everybody knows. While, I would say probably a lot of folks that have been in the industry for a while can probably get their hands dirty with it. To be an expert at it is challenging, especially when you start to get into complex joins and things like that, right? It's not that straightforward. So again, IT dependency, specialized skill set. In cloud, you're starting to go away from those DBAs too. So, we in our old ERP world, our on-premise world, we used to have these DBAs, and the DBAs wouldn't have a lot of these skills, but we needed the DBA to help maintain the database. In cloud, we're starting to move, we were trying to migrate away from that where we had that skill set, right? So it was a little bit of a replacement because you don't have that database necessarily. However, you have to have this specialty to be able to build some of these things, right? So it's a little bit of a catch-22 on that. And then, like I said here, challenge to get it right, and challenge to get the formatting correctly to make sure that you're doing it right. And then it goes with ongoing testing and so on. So a big, when we talk about SQL, it is definitely a big uptaking, and it's going to take some time. Manual searches, clearly that's going to be a very labor-intensive process, right? Double checking things, manually looking up invoices maybe, so on and so forth. So this manual control, right? When I think of manual searches, I think of manual controls. At EY, in Cara and I's world, our goal is to get you as far away from manual as possible, right? We want to get you into that automated world where you have controls that are doing work for you versus you trying to do the controls over and over. We try to get to a 40 to 60% automated process from a controls perspective. We try to get to more preventative type controls that are going to stop fraud from happening. They're going to stop risk, right? They're not going to detect risk. They're going to stop it from happening. That's what we're trying to get. So again, manual is very labor intensive. It's inconsistent. I do it one day, Cara does it another day. Maybe one day, I get distracted by an email and then I skip a step in the process. What have you? It could be any of those number of things, right? That's why manual controls are so, they could be effective, but they're very challenging to do regularly and ongoing, right? If it was once a year, maybe, but if it's a regular thing, it's going to be a lot and to be consistent. Time consuming, we kind of talked about that with the labor intensiveness here, but again, from our world, and I would think that SafePaaS agrees here, is that we want to get you into this preventative nature. We want to get you into this this automation perspective where you have controls working for you versus you doing the controls to do something, right? It's going to be a sampling. So when we think about manual lookups or even SQL, it's going to be a sample based, right? You're not going to have 100% coverage because it's labor intensive. When we talk about analytics here from SafePaaS, it's ongoing, right? This thing is going to keep going. It's going to find that stuff for you and it's going to work for you. So think of it as another human times 100 because they're going to just continually work every single day, every single night, whether we're working or not. And then lastly, no alert monitoring. It's point in time. And it's not, so let's just say I do a manual search, it's at that given time, and then I may not look again for another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it might be, but it's at that given time based on a sample. And then alert monitoring, what I was just speaking to is more detective. When we talk about SafePaaS, it's going to alert us. It's going to say, hey, over here, there's an issue. There is a double, you had 2 duplicate payments, 3 duplicate payments, whatever it is. And that could save a lot of effort, but it also is going to save a lot of money too, right? That's just one example. So again, test scripts can be, they're very, for big data, it's costly, it's unreliable, it's inconsistent, it's very labor intensive usually, and it's based on this sample across the board. So.
Do you want to add anything there, Adil?
No, I agree with all that. I'm just thinking about how we solve these problems. So I'll just add that most of the times when we talk to our customers, the pain points that we're hearing from Kara and Nick are the pain points our customers have. They bring in SQL scripts to us, they bring in spreadsheets to us, and we appreciate that working with customers that already are control centric, right? They're running good organizations, they're governing their business, and they bring all that to us, and our job begins where the solution begins, is where we can see people just light up when we say, okay, you don't have to do all of that spreadsheet jockeying anymore. Now you'll have a system that does it for you, that is SOC 1 certified, so you don't have to constantly look over shoulders and take screenshots whether the data is good or not.
And what about ACL scripts? People probably don't know or aren't familiar with these either. So what is ACL script, first of all?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, it was so funny when we were kind of putting this deck together. I remember I asked, I'm like, ACL, what is ACL? And that's how long it's been since I've been around ACL. I think the last time I've been around ACL was probably 2006 or 2007 maybe. So it's been quite a while. It's ineffective. The first line here is it's ineffective for complex ERP models. When we talk about complex ERP models, the data is in so many different places, in so many different ways and fashions to get the information that it's challenging. Aside from that, we talked about in the last slide this dependency on IT, or the dependency on a specific skill set. It's the same concept here, right? It's another type of quote unquote language that you have to be familiar with, right? You have to have this skill set to be able to use these ACL scripts. So Adil, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but this is the way I look at ACL. I think this is the early 2000s way of managing data and the way to get analytics out, right? Today, there's so many more ways to do it through automation, and that's where SafePaaS comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, companies we talk to have invested, in resources, educating them on SQL, ACL, and all that. So they have been doing some sort of controls. But I think Kara said that earlier. It's just the time you spend on extracting and compiling data versus, focusing on your objectives and how you can be successful is the challenge, right? So yeah, I mean, it's been around for a long time. I started many years ago, in the business where this was the tool that I had to learn to be able to do audits. It was a great start, just like SQL was, but with the data growing like we saw earlier, it's just becoming more and more impractical. You can't run ACL against cloud applications like you were talking about. So Nick, that's where these are old technologies, but people have them and we appreciate that they've been using them. But it's time to move on to the digital platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the business benefits of using advanced transaction analytics?
So I'll touch on this briefly here. So business benefits. So in the beginning, we talked about all the data, tons of data. What do you do with the data, right? Everybody understands controls and being able to do reconciliations, or maybe it's approvals or what have you, right? The business benefit here is now we're talking about actual transactions that are occurring, right? Things that are happening real time. So the business benefit here is that you're going to start to understand those transactions, understand your flow of data, and then detect potential fraud as it's happening, usually, right? Or detect it enough that it's soon enough that you can go and retract from whatever happened, right? Maybe it's a duplicate payment or something of this sort, where you can then start to follow up on that. Before, you don't have these types of things unless it's manual to go and figure out, did we already pay this? Did we pay it twice? Did it come in as a different invoice? Did they already invoice us for the same thing? Whatever it might be, the benefit here is that you're going to be able to track that data, right? So that first one here, we talk about payment processing, duplicate or incorrect payments. That's massive. I had a client once that has, I think, over $1 million in duplicate payments that were saved through a query from transactions, right? So very, very powerful tool to be able to reduce that from happening. Granted, you know, they may have a lot of payments, but again, when you think about the $1 million in saved payments, I mean, that pays for the tool itself, right? Improved incident investigation process by establishing business rules to assign incidents based on risk level and so on. This one is nice because now we have specific incidents that happen, and then it's going to allow us to, you know, tie somebody to that to be able to, you know, look into that incident. Similar to when we think about SafePaaS's SOD, we're now looking and tagging violations to people to look into, or maybe it's recertifications or whatever. Now we're tagging at specific incidents that are happening at a transactional level to specific people to look into and research, right? And then it tracks it for, you know, audit purposes and whatnot. The one thing here I like too is that you can start to tie these controls, then these types of transaction controls, to physical business process controls. So that way there's some type of backup data to be able to support the business process control. Management visibility and independent oversight to monitor approved or rejected payments. That's just one example, but it just provides that visibility into what's going on at a transaction level, right? That's just, again, that approved and rejected payments is one example of that, but it gives that independent oversight. It gives somebody the ability to see what's happening in the data and the transactions on a regular basis. Again, this goes in tandem with your business process controls. It's not one or the other. I think this goes in tandem 1000%. Sometimes you might have a little bit more operational type stuff related to transactions, but I think it can definitely go in tandem. Eliminating inconsistency and contradictory actions produced by auditors by providing structured investigation processes. Again, when I talk about look back procedures, maybe, right? Or controls that are supported by transactions to be able to show things that are happening and how effective this control might be. Hey, we have this control, we've improved the control because we realized that we were making duplicate payments and our transactions were caught, so now we improved the controls and we have this data to support those changes in all of that. So again, eliminates those inconsistencies and contradictory actions by auditors, so reducing your audit cost. Optimize, recover audit business processes with integration to the ERP system for vendor management and payment processing. So again, it's tied into the business. It's going to have vendor management. We're going to be able to see, did we pay them already? Did we not pay them? Is it a duplicate vendor? Did they have a different bank account on that duplicate vendor? And which is where it's coming important with that payment processing, right? So it's optimizing those recoverabilities there. Mitigates financial misstatement risk. I think that kind of goes straightforward with any control across the board that we're going to try to implement, right? Our goal at EY is to give you controls that are going to mitigate financial misstatement risk. That is our ultimate goal when we design controls. How do we reduce risk? How do we mitigate risk? How do we eliminate risk? Whatever it is, that is our ultimate goal. So that's the same thing that goes here. And then it'll streamline your financial close processes and reporting. That's the same thing with any control as well. Our goal is to give you controls so that there's no questions at the end of the day with the transactions that happened, whether it's approvals and whatnot. You have all this data to support your close or your transactions and the integrity of those transactions throughout the month to help you streamline those financial close processes and reporting. Adil, I don't know if
that
you
was
have
great. Thanks, Nick.
Oh, you covered it well, Nick.
And finally, we're going to move on to a case study. So Adil, do you want to walk us through how a leading footwear company was able to control costs with advanced analytics?
Yeah, it's one of the companies I worked with, and now it's been a few years, very closely with their audit, vice president of audit, and they had of course, an ERP system. They had a retail management system, and so our initial work was really related to helping them, as Nick was saying, with compliance, right? So, and that's how we usually get pulled in, is that, hey, we want to improve our ability to test controls, automate controls. And we looked at controls across the board. It's a global company with, I think, 50 plus warehouses around the world, probably bigger now, and I think 500 plus stores around the world. They have a very complex supply chain with Asia Pacific, Latin America, basically a global supply chain. The design's done in the US, but manufacturing is done in all these regions around the world. So a complex business with multiple systems, and they had a number of concerns in, around profitability and productivity. And so some of the challenges, as we have talked about right now, they were using tools like ACL, they were using spreadsheets, but they just weren't able to catch things in time. And because you're in a fast-moving market, in a global supply chain, it's difficult to, by the time you compile all your data and take it to the person responsible for making a decision, the money's left the bank, as they say, right? So that was their challenge, is that even though they were getting information, it was coming not at the right time, it was delayed, it was stale. And so there was frustration on the audit side of the house, but also senior management. They tried using third-party auditors there's a whole industry out there of recovery auditors that'll go and dump the data in Excel and build it, and they take 30% of whatever they collect on average. So they had tried that as well, and with mixed results. And being a global company, they had all the tools in the world. So it wasn't, they didn't invest in reporting tools. They had BI tools, they had data extraction tools, they had ETL tools. But what they didn't have is that, the approach that Kara and Nick talked about, coming from an audit perspective, what is a good control design and how do you make controls effective, right? So, and they tried third-party IT consulting firms and so forth, systems integrators, as we call them. So they were really, leaking cash, and that impacts margin. And what was the big driver for them to move forward with us was that we did an ROI analysis for them, and we showed them that every dollar they lose on the bottom line costs them $10 to re-earn, because when you lose net income or net profit, you have to sell a lot more shoes or apparel to be able to earn that extra dollar back. In their case, it was 10 times. And so it was a really, strong business case. A number of the benefits that we just heard here today applied to this company. So they chose us to help them implement advanced analytics. Now, when we implement advanced analytics, I want to talk a little bit about what that means to you, because it sounds like a big black box. So what we do is we usually come with best practices catalog and partners like E&Y that have, a tremendous amount of resources and experience in doing this work. So we'll sit down with our customers, like we did with CFOs and the CIOs and the line managers in this case, all the way down to procurement and payables and so forth. We basically look at, what controls do they have in place, how assess them, how effective they are, and which of those controls can be automated. Obviously, not 100% controls can be automated. That's our mission and goal. One day that'll be possible as organizations become more digitized, but some things are still done in spreadsheets, and we have some tools to help automate those as well. But anyway, so they had a big chunk of controls in their controls catalog that were good candidates for automation, and some of them were SOX controls, key controls. Some of them were operational controls, which is what we're focusing on today. They usually fall in the category of recovery audit or operational controls. And procure to pay, as I mentioned, was the area. So we were able to take, I think 30 to 50, some in that range of controls that we have in our catalog, and basically deploy them. So it didn't require them to go into this, long paralysis of analysis, which is what customers fear. They don't want to take on huge projects that just don't have any end in sight, and it takes forever to get the ROI. We are expected to produce results in this quarter, this month, this week. So that's what they were looking for, is, hey, show me the proof, and then I'll do more with you. So that's the approach we took. We picked some of the controls that are, if you've been in the procure to pay controls business, like Nick mentioned, I think, so duplicate invoices, split POs, hierarchies is another thing. So we looked at a number of those transaction controls. I think we settled on about 25 of those controls. And these controls were then deployed. The way we deploy controls, and that may be interesting to you as well to know how we do that. So once you select the controls, basically SafePaaS, being a cloud platform, has connection capabilities that supports all major protocols of all major ERP systems, because that's where most of the money gets transacted in the world, right? So if you think about the top 10 ERP systems like Oracle, SAP, PeopleSoft, et cetera, Workday. So those are the systems that SafePaaS automatically connects with. Or you have, let's say, a homegrown. In this case, they had a warehousing system that was homegrown. So we were able to connect to that system. And why that was important to us, because we found there was, everything from fraud to inventory losses that were happening in the warehouses. And I'll explain that in a minute. So we basically connected to all, I think it was 4 to 5 systems we had to connect. As we heard earlier from E&Y, it's not just about extracting data from one source to one spreadsheet. And you all know that have been in the enterprise world. It's about really taking the data from multiple data sources where the data is not being meshed together to provide useful information. So with SafePaaS being a platform where it can take data from multiple sources through many protocols, and I won't go into too many technical jargon, but those of you that are more IT oriented, this is like REST and SOAP for the cloud applications, JDBC and flat files, and all those formats for the on-premise applications. So we have basically all these formats, and we were able to take data from cloud, from on-premise applications, and then mesh it together into these data lakes, is the term I think people use that to define what we do. So we're able to create these repositories of data. Now, extracting data has many challenges. One is, that was mentioned earlier, is completeness and accuracy, right? So an auditor must rely on that data to ensure that the conclusions and observations that are drawn from that data are accurate, right? So for that purpose, to rely on that data, the way SafePaaS works is it has the checksum capabilities where we look at the source and target, so you can be confident, whether you're an auditor, a control owner, a compliance manager, an IT security expert or IT manager, all of these people that get involved in these types of initiatives in a company, they all want to be ensured that data is a single source of truth, I think is what Kara said. So you build that single source of truth, and once you have that data, then you can easily put analytics on it. Instead of writing complex scripts, you can drag and drop elements of data in plain English, right? So one of the things we were able to do is there are basically 4 or 5 categories of controls that we built for them. So first we started with the merchandising losses, and merchandising losses were happening in some cases, basic, obvious, it was called inventory shrinkage in the industry, but people, yeah, that's the screen I was looking for, thanks. So we started I'm going to pick on the second item since I'm talking about that. So that merchandise audit was basically, looking at, shrinkage in the inventory, which has many reasons. Sometimes it's just basic shoplifting, sometimes it's damaged merchandise that is received into a warehouse. There's shipping and receiving control challenges where, you know, you're shipping all these latest, running shoes or golf shoes for the Christmas season, where that people will, it's the hottest product in the market. You're spending a ton of money promoting that on channels. And it just, you know, people walk out with that from your warehousing, because people that can ship product can also receive products. We often see that as an SOD conflict, and that it materializes into an audit risk from merchandising perspective. So we were able to find significant amount of, of their inventory. By significant, I mean all 2 to 3%, where we had, it was above the industry tolerance levels, right? Where it was getting victim to this merchandising losses. And inventory, you live and die. If you're in manufacturing and distribution, you live and die with your inventory. That's an asset. So we were able to dig into that by going into warehousing systems, comparing that against the ERP system, where you had bills received from the suppliers. And there was something interesting that we found, and it's called freight audit, which is kind of related to merchandising audit. In the freight audit, what we found is that they had contracts which have, FOB terms, but they were getting billed twice, right? So even though you had negotiated a contract where merchandise is shipped to you from Asia into California, and the supplier is supposed to carry the expense, but that freight expense was actually getting billed separately by a freight company on top of this. And they had been paying, being a good bona fide company, they had been paying those bills, not recognizing that there are different departments in procurement and payables that weren't connected. So we found some integration issues in their existing systems. So that's kind of the merchandising story, the freight story. And so if you're in a business that does any of supply chain, and these are the control you should talk to our partners like E&Y and us on how we can help you with that. Like I said, our focus is more operational risk today. We do a lot of work on the financial risk too, but that's an example of your money leaving the bank, where transaction monitoring really helps. So when we implement transaction monitoring, like we did for this customer, they were able to reconcile their merchandise against their contracts. It took us some effort. Obviously, as contracts now, they're all online, but some contracts were offline, and they had to get those online, or at least the terms of the contracts in the database. So once we had all the data in there, now we can reconcile the terms of the contract against the freight charges, and we were able to, as I think Nick said, we prevent that from happening. So we would go in, our system would go interact with the ERP system, send it a notification to put that payment on hold till one of their responsible managers could go in and verify if it's truly a contract issue or if there's an exception to the contract. Because you don't want to stop the supply chain, right? So you want to have that flexibility to release holds when that occurs. And so that's an example from merchandising and freight perspective, where what SafePaaS can do is help you streamline these controls by automating the process so that we extract data from multiple sources, and you can set the frequency. You can do it once a day, every hour, once a month, whatever you're comfortable with and your business. It depends on how you want to design that control, and that's where Nick and Kara can really help you guys, advise you on what's the right level of frequency of a control, what's the right kind of a design of a control. So once you design that control, you don't have to do the technical heavy lifting. The SafePaaS objects, control objects will do that for you. So they already will link all your data together. They will produce the results. And then these are some examples of how we do it. So these are what you're seeing on the top left quadrant. There is an example of how the objects that I was describing come in. So these objects are basically imported into a, let's say, a conference room pilot, if you use that approach. So you bring in your elements from across different data sources, and then you can describe, you can assign those, based on your thresholds. You can add rules logic to it. So you can say that, for example, if the invoices are, 99% similar, in other words, the invoice number matches, the date matches, and amount is within, 1 penny, or you can say 100% matches exactly. You can define that in that top left quadrant that we're seeing on the screen here. And that's an example of an ERP customer we're working with. On the bottom left, you can see the details of the object that I was describing. So, what sources that data comes from. So it's very tiny to see, but if we get these screens to you in your emails distribution that Emma does, you'll be able to expand on it. But you can see there are different types of data sources. It could be cloud, JDBC, different formats, different types of data, even flat file. So that data is coming in from across sources and is feeding into that object, which SafePaaS provides you. And then the top right side, what you're seeing is the actual assignment of that risk to someone responsible to manage that risk. As I mentioned on my freight example, that let's say you have an issue and the warehouse manager needs to know about it, that we have an inventory shipping and receiving problem. We have received X amount and only sent out 0.9X, so we have a 10% gap. So let's say that's one of your controls, or same thing with the freight. You've been billed twice. So that is the screen where you can go into SafePaaS on the top right and define, what conditions under which an alert should be sent. Because there's tolerance levels you can accept. If it's maybe under 2%, you just have those relationships with your suppliers, depending on the supplier, well, you will accept that as long as the supplier is reliable and they ship the product that is in the back for a good reason for having a back hold on that. So you will basically program this very easily. Again, as I said, it's point and click. It's user friendly, so you can see there are multiple tabs on the page. You can select, tolerance level. You can select who should be informed. You can also set escalation policies. So maybe the procurement manager receives the first alert, and then it goes to their supervisor, and eventually it goes to the CFO if you want to have that type of hierarchy. And then the other thing that our friends at E&Y and others have mentioned is that, look, it's okay to send alerts, but we don't know what people did with that risk event, right? They just looked at it and shrugged their shoulders, or did they go and fix the problem? Because there's a big difference whether control is operating effectively or not. So we give you these dashboards where you can manage, as you can see in the bottom right side, where you can see risk by process, and drill down into these level of incident details. And what incident detail will do will provide you what we call a closed loop analysis of your risk. So it's not just sending the alert, it's what remediation or corrective action that the person responsible who was assigned this risk took, right? So did they shrug their shoulders and just accepted the risk, or did they in fact go and investigate that and resolve that problem, and also have prevented it from happening in the future by enabling a preventive control within SafePaaS or their ERP system? So now you've got this dashboard where you can drill down into the risks. So to closing the loop, now you can go to what Kara was laid out as the vision, where you're not chasing spreadsheets, you're focusing on success, right? You're taking that information about by process, looking at the incidence risk, and guess this makes your auditors happy too, who tend to be independent of this, right? So the external auditors are coming in and they're saying, how do we know that this process is working? You may have independent auditors within your organization. In this case, this is case study I'm talking about, the VP of audit had independence from the operations. So we work very closely with operations, but this is in the nutshell is what the VP of audit was looking for, is a dashboard where they can go and drill down and see, okay, what can I rely on here to ensure that my financial statements are reliable? At the end of the day, my CFO can sign on the SOX 302s and the 404s, right? And so that really helped them. And that's why I just picked on one example because it'll take me, several hours to explain all of the work we did there. But that same thing applies. So I picked on the procure to pay, I picked on merchandising because this was a retail account for us, but you can apply that same logic to a government agency. We have a Treasury Department of a state that worked with us where they have contracts, that they have to pay on, settlements they have to pay on. So you can apply the same technology to the processes that are important to you as a company, the significant process in your business. Some examples of dashboards that they were able to receive in real time, and this is something they could pull in every day when the VP of Audit walked in, which had experience in recovery audit as well. These were the dashboards. They're all user-defined dashboards, so they're not like hard-coded. We provide this. So now your data, I'll take a step back and say, look, it's easy to draw, graphs from any graphical tool these days or design. It's that data that's, to Tara's point, it's a single source of truth in real time, right? So as your AP systems is being updated, as your warehousing system, merchandising systems, as your retail systems are interacting, you want to be able to see what's happening. So when you go into the board meeting and your CFO is explaining how our performance is from last month to this month, this quarter to next quarter, and they're just disclosing that in a 10K and an annual report, that they can rely on this data to make sure, and most importantly, they can be proactive about it, right? So you're not looking at it as oh yeah, we had some losses and too bad. They're saying, here's what we're doing as senior management to govern our business better, right? And so you can see we provided them claims data around the world, the ratio of claims in different regions, and they could see the controls behavior in different markets. And the reason behind this, because I worked with them, rolled up my sleeves, is that they had different systems. So they have different merchandising systems in Asia versus Americas. And you can see that they had an opportunity to improve controls in certain systems. And they took a kind of a risk-based approach. So where the risk was higher and the impact was higher, that's where they then moved to. They were also able to get a better feel for their vendors as their suppliers. So I mentioned the suppliers that were duplicate billing them. They obviously were, eliminated from the supply chain or given stern warnings depending on the severity. And so they were able to really look at the procurement folks use this every day, and they were able to, score their suppliers better. And these days we have even expanded that capability of what we've all heard in the last couple of years, where SolarWinds was the poster child, unfortunately, a company here in Texas where I am, where they were essentially taken advantage of on the security side. So now that risk has even progressed beyond managing the suppliers from a performance perspective into security and cybersecurity. So all of those scoring methodologies are available to you, where you can score your suppliers. You may have digital suppliers these days, so you can score them, and that gives your procurement team the confidence to do business in this very complex supply chain. So, I mean, in a nutshell, what I would close by saying is that, working with platforms like SafePaaS eliminates a lot of those challenges. You're spending more time focusing on success, but I think you need to take a approach that comes from people, practitioners like Nick and Kara have demonstrated today, right? That you bring folks like them in and they understand SafePaaS, they work with it for a long time, and they can help you prioritize, where you can get the biggest bang for your buck.
Okay, great. Well, we do have a few minutes for some Q&A. So we have a couple of questions here. Question from Paul here. Where the data analytics and reporting intersect in the support of a key control objective, can you speak to how supporting documentation evidence is supplied during the IPE portion of the audit of ICFR?
you want me to take that, or?
Yeah, I was going to see if you can take that. Obviously, I mean, there's certainly the data that can support it, but from the actual information and support, I would definitely lean on you there, Adil.
Yeah, so in case of SafePaaS, I can talk about what our customers are doing today for ICFR specifically, especially in the European markets. It's not as, we're still, working on US GAAP and related Sarbanes-Oxley compliance requirements for our customers here. But what I hear from our customers is that because SafePaaS is a SOC 1 platform, so we get audited very frequently, and we provide reports of assurances on IP to our customers. Our reports, if you get a chance to work with us, you'll see that they spell out the IP portion in a separate section on how you can rely on your SOC 1. But basically, to unpack that, into a kind of a layman term, basically the way that is successful is because, or that's reliable, is because we are taking data from a single source. So there is no human intervention. So typical problems that happen with supporting documentation is that because you're running a query, even in case of cloud ERP that we're working quite a bit with our customers, you're running a BI report. But then the BI report, the question is who created it, how reliable it is, when was it last updated? So that headache that you're embedded into your question basically goes away, right? Because the reliance on that platform. Now, having said that, I also encourage our customers to take a skeptical view of what else can go wrong, right? Because we all come from that audit background. So while the data is all good, I mean, there are portions where the customer, as I mentioned and showed on the screenshot, the customer has the ability to put analytics on top of that data. So what to accomplish that, in other words, the configuration changes within SafePaaS are now in scope for ICFR, for example. So I could, for example, make that question, well, how do we make sure that all the incidents that are generated by SafePaaS are reported? So that's where we have actually change tracking, built within SafePaaS. And that generally is what our ICFR customers rely on, because we have built-in change tracking on configurations, user access, user activity, all of that within SafePaaS as well. And I have to say we meet 90–95% of the times. There are times where I recently had a customer that we're talking to in Europe, working with in Europe, that did ask us for some additional controls that are in their domain that we didn't have. But the good news is we put out 300 to 400 releases a year. So every month you'll get new release updates from us to select from and apply to your business. Because we're completely cloud, one of the things that as a founder I didn't envision benefit to our customers, we were trying to make it really easy and cost effective for them to use. But what has really come out as a surprise to me and a benefit to our customers is our customers share this knowledge about controls on a platform where we have over, I think, 6 million users now. And so these users have the ability to drive forward the control, capabilities within SafePaaS and share those with each other and with us. So we're able to really capture the demand much better on a cloud platform than companies that I worked for in the past, where things were siloed into different departments and even within the companies, and forget about companies sharing things. Obviously, it's all metadata, so it's not like they're sharing each other's actual data, but the metadata that is now available on the platform helps our customers continue to close the loops.
Well, I hope that's answered your question, Paul. We are at the top of the hour. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to our speakers for joining us today. Kara and Nick, your insight is always appreciated, as is yours, Adil, and to our audience for joining us today. Anyone have any closing comments, any closing thoughts for our audience today? Nope. Okay. Well, everyone have a great day, and we'll be back again next month.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.